It is August 20th, and this is to review the work done by Artique Construction, general contractor Garry Smith. Today, around between 2:30 and 3, Joe came by, who is I'm not really sure what Joe is. He's supposed to be kind of like the person that I'm talk to that if Gary's not around, but the challenge is that he's not as handy as I'd like him to be. So he did that. He changed this switch back, this outlet back to normal. Why do I challenged him on that because a few things. If this switch was not normal, then you know, you look at the wording there, the reset would say, you know, reset is upright. So this is correct. It says there's power all here. I'm gonna personally check it. I know there's power because this light indicates that, but I don't know about all these other outlets. So I'm gonna check that. He also said that he was going to do nope, he didn't change out the screws. The screw that was supposed to be white is not white here. He must have missed this room. And the other thing that he said he was going to do that he never did, because he left pretty about 4:40, so he basically was not here for more than 2 hours, was to do this. Since he kept going down to the breaker, he never had a chance to do this, the directory, right? I mean, if you're already down there, why don't you do it? So, yeah, so I don't know. I'm glad he came, but every time he comes, he doesn't really finish what he says he's going to do. So it's kind of annoying because for obvious reasons, he's not thorough with what he does. And if you confront them about it, says, well, you know, it's not his mistake or things like that. And part of me is like, well, no, it's because you're not thorough with what you do. You don't have any practices. Like, as someone that does finance and accounting, as I explained to him, you can't, if you make up numbers, you get in trouble, right? Everything comes from a transaction. It comes from a source. There's a process. That's why in accounting there's this thing called audit, where there's a lot of rules and policies to ensure companies, especially publicly traded companies, have a process in how they derive the numbers. Because as you can imagine, you can always make numbers look better or worse from different sources and uses. So my point is that there's always a process. So at the end of the day, when you're doing, say, a construction project or something like that, like what I'm doing right now, you just walk through. Just walk through and check. I mean, he didn't. So if he did, he missed it. And you know, this is not the first time. So it tells you the I guess you could say the type of person that is doing this job. Someone that's not fully aware. So that concerns me because it's like in a construction project, you know, you need to be aware. In fact, anything, you need to have an awareness. And if you've done it for so many years, that awareness becomes what I would call intuitive, that you're so familiar with it that, you know, you naturally know where to look or troubleshoot. So I'll send him a photo of that, and then I'll gently remind him that, yeah, you know, there's still this thing that he needs to get done. So whenever he can get that done. And, oh yeah, and this morning Garry just dropped off the stone. I could tell him and his worker were avoiding me, and that's one of the challenges, is that, you know, he could have had a carpenter come in here and already spend like a few hours and just get this done. Essentially just put in the outlet, just put in the mirror here, just get done. But the challenge is that all his workers don't have transportation because, well, they are people that he picks up from Home Depot. So basically, they're migrant workers. So they don't have cars, he picks them up. So he has to take them all over there. So he's basically a bus driver for all these workers, and it creates a challenge because it's, you know, as other construction jobs, if you have a worker or subcontractor that can transport themselves, then you can totally do work a lot more efficiently. He's basically the weakest link because he is the person that's literally driving the process. Joe is too. Joe's like a driver as well. So that's the challenge, is that there's only so many drivers that you have, and if you have multiple job sites, who's going to take all these people there? And then there's some employees that, some people that he hires that, you know how to use the bus, and they just get here by the bus, which is also a challenge too, because if they don't have the tools, they're also relying on Garry and Joe to bring tools. And a lot of these guys from I talk to, they have to bring their own tools. So they can only bring so much with them, and there's only so much that can be left on site, because if there's multiple sites, they're not going to buy, like, say if there's 5 sites, they're not going to buy 5 sets of you know, table saws, circular saws, you know, compressors, whatever it may be. So this is why it's hard to get work done. It's all about process, and this is why it's difficult to, if knowing what I know now, I would have thought twice. Like I said before, I think it's easier if you just went directly to the trade. At least you know that trade has their own transportation, has their own, you know, tools, has their own tools in their vehicle, you know, and so forth. And there's a focus of getting a particular job done, and then you just schedule it. That would have been so much faster than just relying on Garry to schedule things, because of course he can only do so much. And you know, yeah, and I know from a project management standpoint, project management in itself, it's a full-time job. So you're trying to be driver, runner, you know, all these different things. You're trying to wear multiple hats, and you know, something's got to give, right? So that's the challenge here, is why this is taking so much longer than what had be anticipated. I was really hoping this stone would be here. It would be in tonight. And again, just annoyed by looking at this. I know, it's just so hard for me to see this, because look at how many times this carpenter had to drill in. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, really. I mean, yeah, and he's probably gonna say, because the floors are uneven, because the soffits were uneven, things like that. And I'm just like, okay, this is, you know, if you're gonna drill in, make it nice, right? Okay, that's it.